Hi everyone, I'm new to this channel, and I've been watching your videos for a while now. They've been giving me chills, but I never thought I'd have something of my own to share. I want to tell you about something that happened to my mom and me. This story isn't just scary, it changed our lives forever. If you're into thrifting or buying secondhand items, you might think twice after hearing this. My mom, Carla, was obsessed with finding hidden treasures in thrift stores, antique shops, and garage sales. She loved the thrill of the hunt, the idea that you could find something valuable among other people's cast-offs. Our house was full of things she'd collected over the years. Each piece had a story, a history. One Saturday morning, she stumbled upon a garage sale in an old, dilapidated neighborhood. The house itself looked like it had seen better days, but that only made her more excited. She always believed that the older the house, the better the finds. The woman running the sale was elderly, her expression vacant, almost lifeless. She barely acknowledged my mom as she browsed through the items. Mom found a few things that caught her eye: a vintage mirror, a set of porcelain dolls, and a small, carved wooden box. The box in particular fascinated her. It was heavy for its size, with intricate, almost disturbing carvings on it. The old woman offered no information about it, just muttering that it had been in the family for years. My mom, ever the bargain hunter, bought it for next to nothing. When Mom brought the box home, she was thrilled with her purchase. I, on the other hand, felt uneasy about it from the start. There was something off about the box, something that made me uncomfortable. But Mom brushed off my concerns, placing it on the mantel in the living room alongside her other finds. That night, strange things began to happen. I woke up to a soft whispering sound, like someone murmuring in the next room. When I got up to check, the sound stopped. I dismissed it as the wind or my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, Mom seemed different. She was distant, distracted. She said she hadn't slept well, that she'd had strange dreams, but she couldn't remember what they were about. I noticed that she kept glancing at the box, almost as if it was calling to her. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the house changed. It was subtle at first. Cold drafts where there shouldn't be. Shadows moving out of the corner of your eye. Mom's mood darkened. She started spending more time alone, staring at the box. I noticed that the mirror she'd bought at the same garage sale had developed a strange foggy pattern, like something was pressing against the glass from the inside. One evening, I was in the living room when I heard a loud thud upstairs. I ran up to find Mom standing in front of the mirror, which had fallen off the wall and shattered. She was just standing there, staring at the broken pieces, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. When I asked her what happened, she claimed she had no idea. It had just fallen on its own. But I could tell she was hiding something. That night, the whispering returned, louder this time. I could hear it clearly. It was coming from the box. I was terrified but too scared to do anything about it. As the days passed, the haunting intensified. Mom's behavior grew more erratic. She would talk to herself, or at least that's what I thought, until I realized she was talking to the box. I would hear her in the middle of the night, whispering in that same strange language I'd heard before. She was becoming obsessed, and it was terrifying to watch. Objects in the house began moving on their own. Doors would slam shut, lights would flicker, and sometimes I'd catch glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of my eye. The temperature would drop suddenly, so cold that you could see your breath. One night, I woke up to find Mom standing at the foot of my bed, her eyes glazed over, staring at me with a blank expression. She didn't say a word, just stood there until I finally mustered the courage to ask her what she was doing. She snapped out of it and left the room, but I couldn't shake the fear that something terrible was happening to her. I decided to do some research on the box, hoping to find out where it came from. I scoured the internet, looking for anything that could explain the strange occurrences. Eventually, I found an article about a series of cursed objects that had been passed down through generations, leaving a trail of tragedy in their wake. One of the objects matched the description of the box, a vessel for a malevolent spirit that fed on the fear and despair of its victims. Desperate, I confronted my mom about the box, but she refused to listen. She had grown protective of it, insisting that it was just an old box, nothing more. But I knew better. The house was no longer just haunted, it was cursed, and the box was the source. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard the whispering again, but this time it was coming from all around me. The shadows on the walls seemed to move, and the cold was unbearable. I pulled the covers over my head, too scared to move, too scared to breathe. I could feel something watching me, something dark and evil. I couldn't take it anymore. The fear was consuming me, and I knew I had to get rid of the box. While Mom was out, I grabbed it from the mantel and took it outside. I tried smashing it with a hammer, but the wood wouldn't crack. I tried burning it, but the flames wouldn't catch. It was like the box was indestructible, protected by the spirit inside. Frustrated and terrified, I took the box to an old abandoned quarry outside of town. I threw it into the pit, hoping that the earth would swallow it whole, that it would be gone for good. But as I drove back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. When I got home, I found Mom sitting in the living room staring at the mantel where the box had been. She looked at me with a mix of confusion and anger, as if she knew what I had done. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She stormed off to her room, leaving me alone in the house. That night I woke up to a familiar sound, the whispering. But this time, it was louder, more insistent. I walked into the living room and my heart nearly stopped. The box was back, sitting on the mantel as if it had never left. It was impossible, but there it was, staring back at me with its sinister carvings. I was paralyzed with fear. How could it be back? I had thrown it into the quarry. There was no way it could have returned on its own. But deep down, I knew that the box had never really left. It was bound to us, and it wasn't going anywhere. The haunting grew worse. The shadows in the house took on more distinct forms, and the whispering became a constant presence. Mom's condition deteriorated. She was barely recognizable. Her once vibrant personality drained away, replaced by a hollow shell of the woman she used to be. One night I heard her screaming from her room. I rushed in to find her thrashing on the bed, her eyes wide with terror. She was babbling incoherently, pointing at something in the corner of the room. But when I looked, there was nothing there, just shadows. I tried to calm her down, but she was inconsolable. She kept saying that they were coming for her, that the box had unleashed something terrible. I knew then that we were out of time. The box had to go once and for all. I decided to take drastic action. I knew someone who dealt with paranormal objects, an old friend of the family who had helped people with similar problems in the past. I called him, and he agreed to come over the next day. That night, the house was eerily quiet. I lay in bed, waiting, dreading what was to come. Around midnight, I heard footsteps outside my room. I opened the door and saw Mom standing in the hallway, the box clutched in her hands. Her eyes were vacant, her expression twisted with fear and despair. She looked at me and whispered, "It won't let me go." Before I could react, she turned and walked down the stairs. I followed her, my heart pounding in my chest. She walked out into the backyard, and to my horror, I saw that she had been digging a hole. The box was leading her to do something terrible, something I couldn't let happen. I tried to stop her, but she pushed me away with a strength I didn't know she had. She placed the box in the hole and started covering it with dirt, mumbling something under her breath. I begged her to stop, but she didn't listen. And then, as she finished burying the box, she collapsed. I rushed to her side, but it was too late. She was gone. In the days that followed, I tried to forget what had happened. I moved out of the house, unable to stay there any longer. But the nightmares persisted, the whispers, the shadows, the box. I knew it was still out there, buried in the yard, waiting. And then, one day, I received a package in the mail. No return address, no note, just a small carved wooden box. The same box I had tried to destroy, the same box that had taken my mother's life. It had found me. I can hear the whispering again. It's getting louder. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know one thing for sure, the box is never going away. It's part of me now, and it's only a matter of time before it takes me too.